Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles and on this episode we're reviewing AEW Collision from July 29th, 2023. If you haven't seen any of my videos before, I grade everything on a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. With that being said, let's jump right into the show. We start off hot, which was something I thought could have been the main event of the show. We get Andrade El Idolo going up against Buddy Matthews in a ladder match, with Andrade's mask being the prize for this match. I really enjoyed this. This was my favorite match of the show, and I thought it was great. These two seem to have a chemistry that makes it so that they don't have anything but good matches. I like the psychology behind this. I liked how they wrestled. I liked the brutality. There was one point where Buddy Matthews throws one of the ladders at Andrade and it hits him pretty stiffly. It looked pretty brutal. The handcuff spots were pretty cool, which brings me to probably my favorite thing in the match. When we see Andrade gets out of the handcuffs only to put Buddy Matthews on the handcuffs, and obviously the spot seemed to be Julia Hart was going to get a pair of bolt cutters and cut him loose while Andrade was climbing the ladder. Well, in a lot of times in ladder matches, we'll see where they'll pause or wait too long on the ladder. The way they did this here, I don't know if it was planned or if it was on the fly. It seemed to be on the fly because like I said, the bolt cutters just didn't seem to be working for Julia Hart. But she looks like she calls an audible, runs in the ring and jumps on Andrade's back, which was so smart. If this was an audible either Matthews or Julia Hart thought of on the fly, it was so intelligent in such a great way to make something that could have been a terrible botch that made the match look hokey end up giving us that great ending that we had. We see Andrade struggling to get up the ladder because of course he's got somebody on his back, which gives Buddy Matthews enough time to actually get the bolt cutters to work and get out of the handcuffs, so he's able to get in the ring. Andrade manages to knock Buddy Matthews off the ladder, and then he still has Julia Hart to deal with, so he pushes her off the ladder into Buddy Matthews, them both going through a table that was sitting in the corner. I thought this was an inventive and creative finish, especially because it, like I said a million times right now, it seemed to be on the fly. This was a fantastic match. I really enjoyed this. I'll give this a 5. I thought it was highly enjoyable. Next up, we get a backstage interview with Miro. And before he could talk, he's attacked by Aaron Solo, which seems to mean that I guess Miro's going to have a thing with the QTV crew. I don't know, maybe it's just Solo. I know last week he wrestled Nick Camarado, who was affiliated with QT Marshall at some point, but he hasn't been affiliated with this newer faction, so I don't know if this is just part of that ongoing. Maybe it'll be a story that ties the two together. I do think Aaron Solo's a guy that should be used a little more. Obviously here he was just cannon fodder for Miro to turn the tables on and get upset. So I do dig this. I like all these Miro segments. I like his interviews. I love his matches. I mean, they've been nothing but squash matches since his return to AEW. But he's getting over so well and he's reminding us what makes him special. Next up, we get a match that wasn't announced prior to the show, and I kind of think they really should have, because I think it would have helped with viewership even just a little bit. We get Darby Allin going up against Minoru Suzuki, an absolute legend in Japanese wrestling, and you can make the argument that everybody that would have tuned in to see Minoru Suzuki was already tuning into this show, but I think he's a decent enough name that you may have got, let's say it only brings you 500 more viewers. That's 500 more than you had. If I could get an extra 500 viewers on these videos, I would be ecstatic. And we'll talk about that at the end. There's something I'm going to bring up at the end of this video. This was a good match. Suzuki, unfortunately, isn't the wrestler he was 5-10 years ago. He still has that aura. He still has that murder grandpa vibe to him where you're absolutely terrified of the man. But he just can't wrestle at the style and pace that made him famous. This is a good match. Darby Allin picks up the win where he basically does the old Bret Hart get out of a sleeper finish where he bridges over backwards and pins a guy. I like this. I'm going to give it a 3. I thought it was good. Afterwards, we see Christian and Luchasaurus come up on the video screen, and Christian is talking about how they're going to defend their TNT Championship against Darby Allin. I gotta say, I'm really loving this turn for Christian as the pompous, I'm the one that won the TNT Championship when he really had nothing to do with it. I do enjoy this. I think this is a good way to use him, a good way to use Luchasaurus. I did enjoy that little promo afterwards. Now going from that, we get Samoa Joe going up against Gravity. And I don't know, are we supposed to think that Gravity is important? Because I believe he's lost all 3 of the matches that I've seen that he's been in either Ring of Honor or AEW. Are we supposed to believe he's an important luchador? I'm honestly asking. I'm not real familiar with his work. I've heard his name before this, but I haven't really seen much of him. Most of the Lucha Libre that I do watch is AAA, and I haven't seen him on any of the AAA cards I've watched. I do understand he's Bandito's little brother, but he doesn't feel special. He feels kind of like, if we look back on WCW days, the way they used a guy like Silver King or Super Calo, where they were just there to take losses to bigger wrestlers. Obviously, Samoa Joe runs through this pretty quickly. I do like the fact that Joe mocked Gravity's walk, where Gravity did kind of a anti-gravity walk thing. Joe does pick up the win. This wasn't much of a match. It was basically just a glorified squash match. I'm giving it a 3. Next, we get the segment that a lot of people are going to be talking about, probably the best segment and most important segment on the show. We have CM Punk coming out for an interview in ring with Tony Schiavone, and he's carrying his red bag, which to this point they haven't said what's inside of the bag. He does finally pay off the tease. He pulls out the World Championship, which is the one he won off of Jon Moxley. He says his blood is still on there from All Out. His name is still on there. Then he pulls out a spray paint can, which to me always harkens back to the NWO, and obviously it had to be some kind of a homage to that. He sprays the belt with an X going through it, which the X has always been a symbol for when he's been a heel and lean more into his straight edge persona. I like that. I do think there is one little criticism. In a show where we have the AEW World Champion on the show, they probably shouldn't have done this, just because you would think there'd be some kind of interaction between the two, the real World Champion and the World Champion. Punk is calling himself the real World Champion here, which brings out Ricky Starks, which is hilarious because initially he comes out without music, and I thought this was so great, and basically says, "Sound guy, I want you to play my music. Everybody here pretend like you didn't just see me." That was perfect. Why doesn't wrestling do stuff like this always? If a wrestler comes out as a surprise, the music should not be queued up. He should either come out with no music or do something like Ricky Starks did here. Nice little subtle touch, made it a great touch for me. They go back and forth. Punk basically says, "I knew you would come out and I knew you would put a challenge out here for me," which Ricky Starks challenges him for the real World Championship. Since what's happened the past few weeks, I have went and got a special referee for that match, which is going to take place next week. Starks agrees with the stipulation to have a special referee before he can leave the ring. Punk says, "Starks, do you want to know who the special referee is?" And he kind of turns back around. He says, "I'll let Tony Schiavone tell you," and Schiavone gives us Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. What a great reveal, and what a great guy to bring in as a special referee. Ricky Steamboat, to a significant portion of this audience, is one of those legends that is evergreen. You could bring him in a million times, and every time he's going to get a pop. He is so beloved and so revered within the wrestling community. Plus, storyline-wise, there's probably no one better than the ultimate babyface, the guy that never turned heel, the guy that always stood for good and righteousness, and Ricky Steamboat being the guy that's going to keep these guys within that moral code, which we've seen them both play up against the heel side of it. Ricky Stark seems to be a more defined heel, although it could be argued that he's kind of a quasi-anti-hero in the way that The Rock was when The Rock was the People's Champion. CM Punk seems to be playing into both the heel and face sides at times, and kind of playing with the reactions he's getting from the crowd, where he's leaning one way, he's leaning another way. At the very least, we get two guys with questionable morals being refereed by probably the most moral wrestler in kayfabe that you could think of. I think this is going to be a great match. One of the two guys is definitely going to eat an arm drag. I don't know how they're going to get out of this, because I do think Ricky Stark should win. However, I don't think somebody other than CM Punk can carry that belt and call himself the real world champion. I think it's a belt and a gimmick that only could be used by the guy that has that claim like CM Punk does. Just saying, I'm going to put my trust in Collision because so far Collision has paid off in their storylines and made sense all the way. So I'm going to put my trust in. After that, we get a 6-man tag match. We get Juice Robinson and Colton and Austin Gunn representing Bullet Club Gold going up against Darius Martin, Action Andretti, and El Vikingo, or El Hijo del Vikingo. I liked this match. I thought it was a good match. I liked all the stuff that Bullet Club Gold was doing with the Jay White cutout. I thought that was pretty fun and funny, and comedy used in a way that wasn't too silly that takes you out of the match. The one drawback I will say about this, you got a guy like El Hijo del Vikingo, which I'm just going to call Vikingo from here out, who I personally think is one of the 4 or 5 best wrestlers in the world. A guy that they even mentioned on commentary just came off a big win over Kenny Omega at Triple Mania 31, which I watched and it was a fantastic show, fantastic match. And you have him on your show and you put him out here doing basically a nothing match. And I'm sorry, it's what it is. This match is just a filler for time for us to get the Bullet Club Gold on the show, which, don't get me wrong, I'm okay with. But if you look at the other side of the coin, Darius Martin, Action Andretti, they've kind of fallen into the lower tier of AEW talent. Vikingo is a guy that I think can absolutely be special, and he could be used in that way in AEW. Just my opinion, if I'm the booker and I'm bringing in a guy like Vikingo, I'm going to use him really well. Again, I do a lot of comparisons to previous generations, but think of it like when Ring of Honor brought in Kenta Kobashi, they had him go against Samoa Joe. Or when WCW would bring in a guy like Jushin Liger. Liger would wrestle people like Brian Pillman or Rey Mysterio. He always had a solid showing and a decent spotlight for himself. I'm not saying you put Vikingo in there with MJF and have him win the championship, but maybe you throw him in a match with someone like, I'd like to see him against Pac. A match with him and Swerve Strickland I think would be a banger. Him and Darby Allin would be great. Him versus Samoa Joe. There's all kinds of ways you could go with Vikingo that would have been a better use of his talent, in my opinion. That being said, it doesn't change my rating on the match overall. The Bullet Club Gold team picks up the win. I'm giving this one a 3. I thought it was good, just not great. Next up, we get our obligatory AEW women's match, which always seems to be right at the same time, no matter what show you're watching. There seems to be that one time spot for the one match, and it's usually right before the main event. I'm going to touch on this at the end of the video a bit more, but right now, I'm going to just cover the match itself. We get Kiera Hogan versus Mercedes Martinez. 2 women's wrestlers I think that are really good and really should be highlighted here. If you're going to build your women's wrestling division, these are 2 of the women I would use in that. I would keep them around for that. Kiera Hogan has a natural ability to connect with the fans. Mercedes Martinez is one of the best women's wrestlers of the last 20 years. I enjoy both of these women. I don't think anything here was special. I thought this was just a good match. Mercedes Martinez picks up the win here. Afterwards, we see what seems to be what they're setting up for with this match, where first Chris Statlander comes out and Mercedes Martinez gets the best of her, and then Willow Nightingale comes out and kind of runs off Mercedes Martinez. Like I said, this feels like we have to put a women's match on, so we're just going to slot this in here spot. I'm going to give this one a 3. I thought it was good. Again, it just feels like it was forced onto the card. And again, I'm going to cover more of that at the end in my overall thoughts. Now that's followed up with our main event of the evening. For the Tag Team Championship, we have FTR defending against Adam Cole and MJF. This is the culmination of the Mixed Partners, whatever they're calling it, tournament they had. And this was fantastic. I enjoyed this very much. I thought I knew exactly where they were going with Cole and MJF. Obviously, it was seeming that they were going to set up a match between the two. But as we go on, it seems to be more that they're gelling together and they're becoming a cohesive unit more than anything else. And the fans are really digging what they're doing. When was the last time you seen, as a wrestling fan, a move like a double clothesline that pretty much every tag team does in every match get over as good good as it is here with just them teasing it. This is so good. FTR, their history with MJF, which is brought up and talked about, the push and pull of the Cole and MJF friendship. This is a really fantastic match. Ultimately, FTR picks up the win by pinning MJF, which leads to what seems to be a crisis of confidence afterwards, where MJF is upset that he lost the match for his team. Adam Cole consults him, tells him it's okay. We tried, we did our best, basically. Gives him his belt, tells him you're still the champion, gives him the world championship, which again goes back to what I was saying earlier. They probably shouldn't have both of these on the same show, or if they do, they should have MJF address what CM Punk said. Little touch. I'm being nitpicky, I know. Adam Cole turns his back on MJF first. It seems like he didn't realize what he was doing, and then as MJF stands up and you could see he's gonna hit him, you could see he's going to hit Adam Cole with the championship, or at least thinking about it. Adam Cole realizes what he's done, so he sticks his arm out and basically says, do what you got to do. Go ahead and do it, which gives us the feel-good moment of the night where MJF throws the belt to the side and doesn't do it because they're friends. That was so great. I enjoyed that so much because it took a little turn on exactly where we thought it would be. I have a real feeling that this match, or this friendship, is going to end with Adam Cole turning on MJF now, and Adam Cole being heel and MJF being a face, which is really weird to say if you think about it, because MJF is a really good heel, and I feel like he fits that role perfectly. I thoroughly enjoyed this main event and the aftermath. I'm giving it a 4. I thought it was really good. Overall, I thought this was another really good show. The matches at the beginning and the end, bookmark it being rather solid. The promo with Punk and Starks and the announcement of Ricky Steamboat was amazing. The Miro backstage interview was really good. I thoroughly enjoyed this show. I'm going to give it a 4 overall. I thought it was really good from beginning to end. Now to address a few things here. First, on the AEW side, there's been a lot of criticism this week about their women's division, and it's something that I've openly criticized for a long while now, especially coming off of what was a lackluster Taya Valkyrie versus Britt Baker match, which I feel like wrestling fans were a little bit too harsh on Taya Valkyrie. I mean, come on, guys. There's a thing in saying that a match is bad, and then there's crossing a line and trying to insult somebody. And that seemed to be what a lot of what I seen was. There were a lot of fans criticizing Taya Valkyrie over her look. And I thought to myself, would they be doing this if this was a men's match? If a bigger wrestler like, say, Samoa Joe had a bad match with somebody, would they be criticizing the way Samoa Joe looks? Probably not. So it feels really disgusting in a way. And secondly, Taya Valkyrie's beautiful. I don't get it. Yes, she's a little bit on the thicker side, more muscular side, and there are people that do and don't like that are attracted to that. We're not attracted to it, which is fine. Be attracted to whatever you're attracted to. I have no problem with that. But to criticize somebody because they're bigger than your favorite wrestler, I think it feels a little too icky for me. With that being said, the division as a whole needs something to spark it. It has been seriously lackluster, and this has been the ongoing thing since the beginning of AEW. And in my head, for the beginning, I'm going to be honest, and I thought the reason it was lackluster was because the original setup was for Kylie Ray to be the face of the division, and when she had her issues and she walked away from AEW, which, not knocking Kylie Ray at all, I didn't think they ever recovered for that. And then from there, I think they've had some things that have been good that they haven't capitalized on. I mean, Britt Baker's probably the best thing that they have capitalized on, but other people like Nyla Rose, who's not on the show barely ever, who's an amazing wrestler and has an amazing story and puts on great matches and gets a great reaction. People like the Bunny, who are just basically an afterthought, but the Bunny was amazing in Impact Wrestling, could really be used better here. I think a lot of the problem is that wrestling fans know we're going to get that one match on every show that's the women's match. And you can see here, there's 6 matches on this card, and only one of them's a women's match. Now, would that be a problem if next week there were 4 women's matches? No, because it'll balance itself out. Am I saying they should do 3 women's matches and then 3 men's matches on the card? I'm not saying that either. You can have a card where it's 2 women's matches. You can have a card where it's 5 women's matches. You can have a card where there's all women's matches and vice versa, all men's matches. This kind of feels like the biggest criticism people had during the WWE Diva era, where the Divas division or women's division was kind of treated as an afterthought and not really given much time and not given much onus on their shows. Which again, I think they got the talent there. I think there needs to be an effort put into having more than just one women's segment on a show and kind of slotting it in. And I know Tony Khan's an analytics guy, and this probably has something to do with the way the analytics work, but try something different. Why couldn't we have mixed in, instead of like Samoa Joe versus Gravity? Maybe we could have had a Sky Blue match there, or a Ruby Soho match, or Willow Nightingale. And I'm not knocking Joe and Gravity here either. I'm just saying we have 5 hours of television. For this to be an issue where the women are not getting enough time, it really seems like a booking issue more than just a talent issue, in my opinion. They really need to do better, and I think it's perfect with that fan that got caught with the book the women's division better sign or something similar to that on Dynamite. The fans know, the fans want better, and needs to be better taken care of. Now from that, we're going to talk about a heel heat issue. So I've been doing these AEW collisions, and I've been noticing my views for the collision reviews have not been meeting what my normal channel views are. And the reason I'm bringing this up is, this is a smaller YouTube channel, and the way it's going to go out there and be promoted all depends on the views at this point, the likes, the shares, all of that stuff. It really does help. And when I put out something and it doesn't get the same amount of views or around the same amount of views as my other videos do, it kind of hurts the algorithm. And it kind of tells me that most of you don't really want to watch this. And I know if you're here on this, you're someone that does want to watch these. I'm bringing this up because this may be my last AEW Collision review, depending on how well this one does. If this one tanks the numbers, it's hurting my channel to do them, and I'm just being honest. So if you want to see these continue on, like this video, share the video, subscribe if you're not a subscriber, put comments in here, talk about how you think the women's division could be fixed. Let's help that algorithm. And if I see that this isn't getting enough support, I'm probably going to pull this from my lineup and look for something different to do that people are going to like better. So again, if you are enjoying this, like it, share it, comment, all that fun stuff. Depending on how this video does, determines how much longer I'm going to cover AEW Collision. So that's up to you guys. I'm leaving it in your hands. With all that being said, my name is George Coles, and this has been my AEW Collision review.